the cool thing is now in hindsight, like I get to coach other freelancers and I teach online courses. So I'm still essentially teaching. It just looks different. So I still get to fulfill that part of me that is like really enjoys education and helping other people, but I don't have to do it in the structure of the public schools.
This is the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast, where we inspire solopreneurs like you to win back your life by teaching you how to build businesses that maximize your freedom, flexibility, and income, all without trading time for money. Here's your host, Nick Murphy.
Hey, my friend, and welcome to the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast. My name is Nick Murphy. I'm your host. If you're new here, I appreciate you being here no matter how you found the show. I'm thrilled that you're here. My goal, as always, over the next 30, 40 minutes is to add a lot of value and help to pull out lessons from the conversation you're about to listen to that you can apply to your business and what you want to do, what you want to build. This whole show is about building a career on your terms and using a lifestyle business as the vehicle to do just that. If you're a frequent listener, you know I love you. If you haven't yet rated and reviewed the show, you only got to do it once. It means the world to me. I'm going to ask you each and every week. I read those reviews personally, and in addition to that, it really triggers the algorithms to go ahead and show this show to more people that are perusing their podcast app for shows like this. You're going to help the show grow. You're going to do me a huge favor. So if you get any value at all out of the show, please do rate, subscribe, and review it at least one time. Thank you so much for doing that. Today's guest is Laura Pennington Briggs, and in our conversation, Laura and I discuss why she chose to leave her job as an inner city educator, her decision to put her PhD on hold to pursue freelancing, and she shares her advice for any aspiring freelancers who want to scale their freelance business. As always, there's a ton to cover, so please enjoy my interview with Laura Pennington Briggs. My guest today is Laura Pennington Briggs. She's a former teacher turned online writing entrepreneur. She's delivered 2 TEDx talks on the freelance economy and is the author of How to Start Your Own Freelance Writing Business. Laura, thanks for being here. How are you?
I am thrilled to be here. So thank you.
I am really excited to have you. And I love the freelance economy is a great term. And there's so many opportunities out there for people both to freelance and kind of moonlight while they have a corporate job, to slowly peel off that, to get back into the economy in a working capacity, starting with freelance. There's a lot of stuff I want to explore. But before we get there, just kind of walk back in time a little bit. And your original career, you were an elementary or an educator. Talk about that career, kind of what your plan was going in, and then we'll get into kind of what changed and what shifted to get you where you are today.
Sure. So I always wanted to be an educator. I was on track to become a professor. I was in a master's degree program at Virginia Tech, and I taught and I worked for 5 different professors while I was there and really loved it and thought that was going to be where I was headed. So when I started my PhD program, I was working on my PhD classes at night, and I thought, rather than just being a broke graduate student, why don't I go get some actual teaching experience during the day since my classes are at night anyways? I became a middle school teacher in Baltimore City public schools, and that was the most challenging time of my life. That is a school system that does not have a lot of resources, structure, and support, especially for teachers, but also for students. And being a first-year teacher and being thrown into that environment in particular was pretty much an uphill battle. And, it was like any teacher struggles. I was stressed out a lot. I put in 14-hour days regularly, but it kind of built up to the point where my body kind of honestly started shutting down, and it became a medical issue. Like, I can't teach for 7 hours straight without a bathroom break anymore. And the anxiety level of like just driving into work and literally seeing extremely violent things on the street as I'm pulling up to my school, it really got to be too much for me. And then combine that with sort of the administrative approach towards running the particular school I was at. And I realized that I did not want to be in traditional education at all. So that was a real difficult thing for me to process. I was in the middle of a PhD program. I already had a master's degree. I had teaching experience at the college level and was kind of, 25 years old and going, okay, well, what now? I've spent most of my educational adult life figuring out how to become qualified and certified as a teacher. And now I don't want to do that at all. So it was a real big shift.
So how'd you handle that? I think that's a lot of people get to that point and there's this sunk cost fallacy of, well, can I turn back now? This is what I've trained for. This is what I want to do. It sounds like not just traditional education in the elementary or middle school level. Did you not want to teach at the college level anymore either? Was the PhD kind of put on hold? How'd you handle all that? That's a lot of shifts just mentally based on your perspective.
It is. So I'm still in my PhD program. I have put it on hold. I completed all my coursework. I'm actually done with everything but the dissertation. But what happened when I left my teaching job, I took another position, sort of a more traditional office job in corporate America, and started my freelance business on the side. And what happened was my freelance business has pulled so much of my attention, and in the best possible way, that my PhD has definitely taken a back burner, but I am on track to finish it within the next year and be done. But do I ever plan to go work in education again? Probably not. I mean, if there was some temporary position as a professor teaching something I was really interested in, I'd consider it. But my passion is really writing and coaching other freelancers. So as far as making that transition, it was really difficult for me. I'd spent so much time to becoming an educator, and I went through my teaching certification in a process that's very similar to Teach for America. They have a version of that that's specific for Baltimore City called the Baltimore City Teaching Residency. And we would teach all day, and then we would have certification classes at night. So it was not uncommon, to sleep 4 or 5 hours and then get back up and go back to school. So it was really hard for me to leave my students too. I felt like I was failing them. I felt like I'd failed myself, and I really felt ungrounded. So I took a position in corporate America, essentially to figure out what to do with my life. Like, what am I going to do now? Am I going to finish this PhD and still work towards being a professor? I was so burned out on education. I just was like, I can't, if this is what it is, there's no way I could do 30 years to retire. So I was like, all right, back to the drawing board. And the reason that I stumbled upon freelance writing is because I thought, okay, I have all these skills in education. I've been a teacher. What core skills go into that I might be able to move into something else? And I'd always been told I was a good writer. I'd never sold a word before, and I did not study English or anything like that in college, but I thought I might as well try because I have this job. I have that security and safety net now. So why don't I make a go of it and see if it's legitimate? I also thought it might be a scam too. Like, it seemed a little too easy, like write articles.
Sure, I'll pay you. Just send me the article first, please.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I wanted to make sure it was real. So I did that as a side hustle for 13 months while I was working in that corporate job. And then I left and have been full-time since then. But it was a really rough period. I felt like I had lost a part of my identity. And the cool thing is now in hindsight, like I get to coach other freelancers and I teach online courses. So I'm still essentially teaching. It just looks different. So I still get to fulfill that part of me that is like really enjoys education and helping other people, but I don't have to do it in the structure of the public schools.
Did you get pushback on that decision from people close to you, from peers? Did you hear about it? Do you anticipate some people are going, wow, you're the most overqualified freelancer on the face of the earth, and you've got all this education, and this is what you choose to do? Like, there's a lot of people that want to go down a path similar to that, follow their passion one way or the other, that don't for, that kind of reason or that kind of feedback. Did you experience that? And if you did, kind of, how did you get past it?
I think the only time that I experienced some confusion and or pushback was from the people in my academic circle, because they didn't understand why you would leave essentially working towards a career in academia or go through a PhD program with the intention of not teaching. And it was a crisis for me too. Like, well, why am I finishing this? Like, a PhD in public policy has nothing to do with what I do all day now. But it was like, I was so far along in the process that I wanted to finish. My boyfriend, he's my husband now, he was like, get out of Baltimore about 3 months in. My mom chimed in like 2 weeks after that. And they were like relentless for the whole time I was working there. Like, get out. This is bad. This is dangerous. This is stressing you out. But I stayed. I was stubborn. So it was a little bit of a transition. And it's been an ongoing challenge with my academic department because, of course, they want me to finish. And it's like, do I want to finish? Yes, as a personal goal, but I don't want to be an academic. Like, that seems like it's a more secure path, I guess, for some people. But the truth is that there's a lot of unemployed PhDs out there, and there's a lot of PhDs who don't make that much money. And I saw that was something that would be really limiting for me. So it's been kind of I've definitely taken longer to finish than I probably should have. But for me, looking back and saying, like, I focused on growing my business, landing TEDx talks, getting a literary agent, and publishing a book, I don't regret any of those things in hindsight.
So I want to dig into the statement you made a minute ago about how you were stubborn. I spent some time in Baltimore when I was with the Ravens. You mentioned that you saw violent things literally on the way into your parking lot. What was going on in your head? You obviously have your head and your heart, I guess. You have this, your health was suffering, you weren't sleeping, it wasn't fulfilling, it was violent. You had people in your life that you cared about telling you should quit or get out of it or find something else to do. Was it the kids? Was it like, just what were all the things that were pulling you towards staying? Obviously, you made the decision to leave ultimately, but I want to just kind of get into what was going on the other side of that that was attracting you to this thing that so many people, including your own body, were probably telling you to escape from.
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of it was the kids. I taught about 110 students and about 20 to 25 of them were just awesome. And I was like, I got to keep showing up if only for those 25 kids. Like, I'm not going to let them down. A lot of kids in inner city situations have been let down by a lot of adults. And I did not want to add my name to that list of people who were in your life for a very short period and then ultimately disappointed you. I'd also put a lot of time into getting that position. Like, it was 9 months of applications, interviews. I had to deliver test lessons in front of students. I had to shadow teachers for a couple of days. I was doing this certification thing at night. So I knew that walking away from the program was a huge deal. I was saying essentially, I don't want to be a certified teacher. So I couldn't ever take that certification and go teach in another school without going back to undergrad, doing 4 years and getting an education degree. So it was the sense of finality of it. Like, if I was ever going to teach in public school, this was going to be the path. And if I walk away from it, it's not going to be good. And even the day that I resigned, my boyfriend had to take me into the school because I had sprained my ankle. And this is what I literally mean. Like, my body was literally shutting down and giving me every signal of like, you're done. You're physically unable to drive to Baltimore. My boyfriend took me there to pack up some of my stuff in my classroom. And one of my students was in the hallway. This was like after school. And he came in and he goes, Miss P, because they all called me that. They couldn't pronounce my last name. And he goes, where have you been? Because I'd been out for 2 weeks. And I just burst into tears. I was like, this one kid, like, I put like all of it on him. I was like, oh gosh, I'm letting him down. Like, I'm disappointing him. Like, this is not the way that I wanted to go out. And also just me as a person, like, I committed to something and I didn't finish it. That was really hard to just say, like, wow, I am fully closing the door on this opportunity.
It's difficult. I think there's a lot of people out there that are pulled for different reasons to stay in something that they inherently know they need to or want to get out. But when is the right time to walk, right? Like, when do you shut it down, and when do you make that decision to pivot? Obviously, you've had TEDx Talks, you've found a literary agent, you published a book, you're in business for yourself now. But let's go back, jump kind of into the story where you had the corporate gig, you had left teaching. What did you do first down that path? It's hard to go out and just get a TEDx talk right after a teaching gig, or was it? What did you do first, and kind of talk about that story for us?
So everything that built up to some of the bigger stuff, like doing a TEDx talk, like getting a book agent and publishing, is directly related to my freelancing experience. So it didn't happen right away. It opened a lot of doors by being a freelancer and having that area of expertise. I started by seeking other people who had become freelance writers. I was like, I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Let me go find someone who's successful and see if they'll teach me how to do it. And I found a mentor pretty early on who'd been doing it for about 15 years. And I bought everything she sold. And we were still on a budget and had limited means. So I would, wait 3 weeks to make that $50 ebook purchase. But I used that and I reread these PDFs she sold over and over and started marketing myself. And even just making my first $100 felt like such a win. I did not go into it with the intention of building a business. I thought this would be a great way to make an extra few $100s a month to help float us by till I figured out what I was going to do with my life. And I'd also taken a pay cut, surprisingly, from going teaching to a corporate gig. I was being paid on my graduate degree at the teaching job. And so I took about a $10,000 a year pay cut. And so I was like, this will be extra money. This will help like pad that transition. It was really my experience of growing my own business, pitching clients, negotiating with clients, firing clients, learning kind of trial by fire in my freelance business that opened a lot of these other doors down the road.
There's a lot of people out here in the audience that have hired freelancers. Some have been freelancers. From the freelancer perspective, how did you go about deciding on which projects and which clients, and what were the pain points for somebody who might be supplementing their income while they grow their business by freelancing? There's a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of lessons learned the hard way. Speak to that person for a minute and give them a little bit of advice in terms of how to choose projects and clients as a freelancer.
The first thing I would say is know that you cannot prevent every negative situation. So You want to be as smart as you can about avoiding some pitfalls, but don't beat yourself up if you do bring on a client who isn't a good fit or you undercharge on a project. You'll learn a lesson from that. Sometimes people can help you avoid those situations, but other times it's just personal experience where I've had a bad experience with one client, said, okay, this is now a new clause in my contract. This is now a new question I asked during the screening process because of that one bad experience. So the one thing I will say is when you're in business for yourself, you get to choose who you work with. So if you have specific requirements about somebody's personality or the way that they give you assignments or the way that they ask for revisions, that's okay to have. We're often taught in the corporate world that the customer is always right. I don't believe that. I don't work with everyone. And if someone is like, for me, one of those pain points is someone who's rude on the phone. So if you're rude on the phone, we're not working together. Like it's as simple as that for me. I don't want difficult people in my life. I want only ideal clients. So that makes me excited about every project I work on because I know I vetted the person. So decide early on. What are the things that you're comfortable with? What are the things you're not comfortable with? The real things to be aware of are locking yourself into ongoing or big contracts where you're lowly paid because it's difficult to get out of those. If you've made a commitment to someone for 6 months and you charge $20 an hour because you're like, well, I'm a beginner, you're in that for 6 months, right? Or you leave the contract early and the person's mad and there's no referral, testimonial, or possibility of future work. So my advice would be, try a couple of different things, try smaller scale projects, figure out what you do and don't like. Sometimes you don't know that until you do it, and then start refining that towards deciding what your ideal client situation looks like.
So where in your mind is the best place for people to go to put their name out there in the freelancer community and find those gigs?
For beginners, job boards, so places like Upwork, FlexJobs, places where the clients already know they want to outsource are a good place to start, and also to do research because you can see what people are looking for, what software skills are they asking for, etc. However, my number one lead source today is LinkedIn. It's free. If you develop a good strategy to work with LinkedIn, you can really build a network and connection there. You can make yourself visible to recruiters. I get 2 to 3 recruiters a week sending me a message saying, hey, I have such and such client or such and such opportunity. They're not all a fit, but it's a really easy way for me to continue getting my name out there.
That's great advice. I hadn't thought about the LinkedIn strategy, but that makes total sense. Let's talk about the business that you have today. Kind of how did you set it up the way that you did? You both teach, you coach, and you still freelance, it sounds like. What is that day-to-day business? How does it evolve over time? And kind of where do you see it going in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, sure. So the first, I would say 4 to 5 years of me being a freelancer, it was all about delivering client projects. Everything was 100% freelance. I was mostly doing writing. One of my clients came to me and said, hey, I think you'd be a really good project manager, hiring other freelancers, training them, giving them feedback. So I've done that for several companies. I worked with Microsoft and TrueCar, and I'm, consulting with another client right now about building out their freelance bench. And so just like the TEDx talk and the book, like a lot of doors have opened because of my experience. So a couple years into it, someone asked me like, hey, can you teach me how to do what you do? And I'd never even thought about that. So I made an online course and I sold it to 2 people that I knew personally. And kind of from there, that evolved into having an online course portion of my business. And now I coach advanced and intermediate freelancers who are looking to scale without getting burned out, or they're trying to pivot into some new service area or something like that. So no 2 days look the same for me. I spend a couple of hours a day on client work. And then I also there's a lot of flexible time, like my book's coming out. So I'm doing a lot of promotion around that. I'm doing a lot of pitching of speaking gigs and preparing for my summer speaking gigs. So that takes up more time. And then I coach all of my clients over Voxer, which is great because whenever I take breaks during the day, I'll go listen to all their messages and reply to everything. So it fits in very flexibly with the rest of my schedule. But I don't like to do more than about 20, 25 hours a week of client work. That doesn't compromise quality. I don't get frustrated or burned out or overwhelmed. And I like having the variety in my life. So that really works for me.
That's awesome. It sounds like you found a really great way to structure that balance and do some of the tactical work, or you're actually doing deliverables, working on projects yourself, and also kind of coaching and firing up that natural educator in you and still getting able to do both those things. That's huge. As you started your business, what did you think was the biggest challenge? And kind of for someone who's just looking to get into the business like this, what can they expect to happen that maybe they'd be able to avoid by hearing your story about your biggest challenge and how you overcame it?
There are two top things that I hear from beginner freelancers, and I definitely struggled with one of them. And that's pricing. Like how the heck do I price myself? Because you don't have any experience and yet you don't want to undersell yourself. The way that I got around that was I just picked like a starting hourly rate and then would estimate how many hours it might take me to do a project. And I'd quote a flat fee to the client. And of course, that meant that sometimes I'd be in the middle of a project and realize I really undercharged on this project. And so I would just finish the project professionally, make a note of it for the future, and adjust my rates accordingly. So that's a big stumbling block for people. Now I approach pricing in a whole different way. I don't spend more than 5 minutes thinking about it. I get a sense of things from the client. I ask the questions I need to know, and then I write it up and send it off. I don't like when people spend like hours or days working on a proposal. You don't need to do that. Like, it's much better if you just come from a place of confidence. So don't spend 3 months thinking about your pricing. Like, give yourself a weekend to figure it out. And then like by Sunday at 5, I've picked my hourly rate or I've picked my base rate to work with clients, and I'll adjust as needed. The second concern is, where do I get clients? And at the beginning, you have no clients, so it feels like you spend a ridiculous amount of time marketing. You should always be marketing. I think even when you're fully booked, I'm still marketing to some level, because I never know when I might need to get out of a contract or when a client might end something. So finding clients, you will dedicate whatever portion of hours you have free outside of your day job. Like, say you have 10, you're probably going to spend all 10 marketing when you get started. All 10 should be actively reaching out to clients, generating conversations. And I think that changes over time. It becomes much less of a part of your daily and weekly focus. But if you don't have any clients, you're not making any money. So it's one of the most important things is being comfortable with putting yourself out there and hearing no or getting no response at all, and figuring out, is this just a matter of numbers? Or do I need to get help with my pitch or the samples that I'm sending because they're not good enough for me to get a response?
So let's talk about the samples early on. Freelancers people who hire freelancers want to see samples of similar work. They want to see a portfolio. If you are just getting into freelancing and you don't have anything like that, what suggestions would you give somebody to pitch a client, or what can you provide, if anything, that kind of overcomes that while you get your first couple projects that you can put into a portfolio?
Make it up. I made up 3 blogs that were never published anywhere. I was never paid to create them at all. And I use those to land dozens of projects. So come up with something that's similar to what you might produce for a client. Let's say, that you're going to pitch Disney, or you want to pitch companies that are like Disney. Write a blog as if it was for the Disney website and say, this of course isn't published, but here's an example of my style so they can see it. If you're a website designer, create your own website and be like, hey, look at my website at promoting my freelance design services. It's a good example of my style. I think most clients care about the fact that you are who you say you are and that you do have the skills necessary. So especially in the freelance world, it's really cool because we can often use our own accounts, which we need for marketing anyways. Like a social media manager should have a great Pinterest and Instagram account to point the client to, which they can build up themselves and also is a marketing engine for them. So that's what I do. Don't stress about it. Sometimes clients will want to see things that are published, or they want to say, give me 3 references of clients you've worked with before. In those kinds of cases, I just say, hey, I'm actually quite new to this. So you can volunteer your services to a charity you care about and say, hey, could I make like a landing page for you guys? Could I make a really cool banner or something you can use to promote your new fundraising on social media? And that way it's a win-win for everybody. You get a sample, and then you also help out something that you care about too.
In your examples, you've talked a lot about writing. Obviously, that's kind of your superpower, a little bit of design in there. For the person out there that wants to go into freelancing or thinks it's a great way to kind of get some more experience or supplement their income, that might not be a writer, might not be able to build websites, what other types of occupations or skills can be put into the freelance economy? And how would you recommend someone who doesn't have something as, I don't want to call it obvious, but obvious as a service or a skill as writing something? Everybody needs so much content right now. What other jobs and skills could be turned into a freelance occupation for somebody that's just interested in looking at that as a possibility?
Yeah, marketing expertise, voiceover work, illustration. There's freelancers of pretty much everything related to some type of digital marketing. There's people who do video editing freelance. I have a freelance podcast editor, who works with me, for example. So there's lots of different options. But if you're looking at it and going, I don't have the skills yet, I need to buy a book or take a course in the meantime, a great place to start is by marketing yourself as a virtual assistant, because virtual assistants do a lot of research and administrative tasks. You probably have some experience doing something like that in school, in a volunteer organization, or for a company you've worked with before. And then that's a good way to start building up some money, maybe while you explore other avenues. And the cool thing about the time we're living in now is you can teach yourself a lot of stuff. You do not need to go back to school and study web development for 2 or 3 years. Like, check out udemy.com. There's lots of courses that are $10 and $20. You can teach yourself a lot of really cool things and make it something that does become part of your expertise.
Absolutely. YouTube. I mean, it sounds kind of cliche. My kids watch way more YouTube than I do, but anytime I want to learn something, I did this the other day just to figure out how in the world to get the freaking battery out of my my remote start for my car. The battery was dead and I couldn't figure out how to open the damn thing. Like, there is a YouTube video that will teach you everything in the world. You gotta be careful which ones you listen to, but YouTube is the third biggest search engine in the world. And that's a great place too for free to go out and get some basic knowledge on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we talked about your biggest challenge. We talked about a lot of stuff. What has been like the moment in time, if there's one, where you just kind of, you have this moment, it just hits you and you go, wow, like this is why I do this. What's been the biggest high point in your business thus far on your journey?
Oh, man. Well, there's one for my freelance business, and then there's one for kind of how I've branched out in the last year or so. I remember in 2014, I landed a $50,000 freelance editing project with one 5-minute phone call. Like, I applied to a job board ad. The guy wanted to talk to me. He sent over the contract and like paid the deposit immediately. And I was like, wait, what? Like, it was so easy that I was like, that's absolutely crazy. Cause that's like what I got paid to teach for an entire year as a teacher. So it was like, I was just blown away that was like a 6-month project part-time that was a way to make money. And then I think honestly, in the last week or so, like we just got the physical copies of my books. They're not live until July 16th. And I've done so much prep for this book to be published and so much marketing and stuff. But it wasn't until I had a physical copy of the thing with my name on it. And I was like, whoa, this is real. Like, this really happened. So it's really neat. Like, when you put in a lot of work behind the scenes and then there's something like tangible or exciting about the final project where you can like take a deep breath and you're like, wow, like I did that. I'm really proud of myself. It wasn't easy, but I did it.
No, that's awesome. I published my first book in January, and I was listening to a podcast this morning, actually, before we hit record, and it was somebody else who had published their first book, and they used the analogy that they felt like they were walking around without their skin. Like, you put so much of yourself into this book and this project, and then you see it, and you hold it in your hand, and there's that moment where you're just like, holy cow, this is a real thing.
Yeah.
I love that. We play a little game on the show here called Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire is brought to you by Podigy. You frequent listeners know that I hate doing my own audio editing. I don't write my own show notes. It's not my superpower. It's not the best use of my time. And so I outsource it. I looked at freelancers and I eventually found Podigy. They make me and guests like Laura sound great each and every week. So if you have a need in the podcast editing space, go ahead, check out Podigy.co. Let them know that I sent you. Laura, are you ready to play Rapid Fire?
I am.
Let's do this. What do you think about when you're alone in your car?
I do a lot of business planning in my car, next ideas and things I'm going to create.
What's your advice for your previous boss?
Oh, listen to your employees when they're speaking up about somebody toxic in the workplace.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I still want to be a writer.
What inspires you?
Reading really good books.
What is your biggest fear?
Going over the side of a bridge in my car and drowning because I can't get out.
That's crystal clear.
Yeah, I hate that.
Who do you admire the most?
Oh my goodness. I have just so much respect for all of the women in recent years who've been speaking out about sexual assault and harassment and kind of normalizing a lot of the stigma around these things that a lot of women have gone through and been victims of for a long time.
Which celebrity annoys you the most?
I really hate Seth Rogen. I can't stand him. He's not funny. He needs to stop making movies.
How do you define success?
Being happy with what you do and providing something to other people that helps them in their life.
All right, last one. You get to share a drink or a meal with anyone in history, dead or alive. Who is it and why?
Oh man, this is such a good question. I don't know who I would love to speak with who's dead or alive. Man, that is a really, that one's got me stumped. I guess I don't know. I don't know that no one pops to mind right away.
All right. You survived rapid fire by the skin of your teeth. Congratulations, Laura.
Thanks.
And last question, knowing what you know today about your business, if you were going to go back and start completely over from scratch tomorrow, what's the one thing you'd do differently?
I would be more trusting of my own abilities and recognize the signs and kind of financial and otherwise from clients that I could make a go of doing this full time much sooner than I did. I waited a long time to jump ship and I wish I'd done it sooner.
Great advice. And for the listener out there that is thinking about getting into freelancing, that might want to work with you or just learn from your vast experience, where can we go to connect with you more closely online?
Sure. Check out my website, betterbizacademy.com.
All right. We will put that link in the show notes. Laura, great conversation. Love your journey. And guys, if you listen to this show each and every week, nobody's story is the same. And they all, the similarities are that we start doing one thing and we kind of all get lost and figure out what it is we want to do. And then we go start taking action towards that thing. And it evolves into this business that fires us up at the end of the day. And, Laura's another shining example of that. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Congrats on the book. Good luck with the launch. Let us know how we can help support that. And thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Laura Pennington Briggs. Listen, even if freelancing isn't something you aspire to do, it can be a great vehicle to bridge a gap in income. If you're looking to get out of your corporate job and you want to make a little bit of money, whether to live on or to invest early stage in your business, if you want to attend a conference, if you want to pay for an online course, if you really need to go to an event to learn about an industry to decide if you want to make that leap, or if you're in the business and you know it's something that can help you, you just need a little bit of extra cash in order to justify it. Freelancing is a really great way to do that. I created a freelance profile on Upwork not that long ago to do some StoryBrand work, and I'm charging $150 an hour. I only do about 3-5 hours of it per week, but people are saying yes, and it's easy money in terms of the time it takes. It doesn't take away from what I'm doing in my core business, and it actually keeps me sharp and helps me hone my skills. So if you haven't considered freelancing, I think Laura has a really important lesson there and went through a lot of great value in terms of where you can go, how to do it on LinkedIn. That's a great strategy as well. So hopefully you took a lot from that conversation, whether you aspire to be a freelancer or not. There's a lot of stuff that she packed in there. Once again, my weekly reminder to please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever it is that you listen to the show. I read each and every review, and it really helps the algorithms put a little more juice on the display and make sure that most people that are looking in the category will see this show. I appreciate it so much. So please do that if you haven't done it. I'm going to ask you every single week, and I really want you to do it. So please do me a little favor. Love you all so much. Thank you very, very much for doing that. And before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you to get in the game if you're not already. Trading time for money is no way to live, and building a lifestyle business is the fastest, best, and easiest way to do just that. Thank you so much for being here. I love you guys. I will talk to you next week. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast. To access the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.nickmurphy.io.